First of all, in their defenses, the people attacking the mental health of presidents are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, fact-cheaping nature, quality aspects in nature. Relative to them being so too, is because how at campuses A through Z they have replaced what James Madison's plan was about. They have replaced principles. They have replaced the principles of black people's rights of eyes in the breaching method to show them the other. They've been putting fake transcripts and databases right through administrations. In other words, they're changing and faking people's words afterwards. They have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, rot readings of statutes and of exceptions and exception nature, right where and how they are used remotely. There's not one job of the law that was legitimate. We could discern how they were abused to keep that the outcome /S. Black people. We have black people's rights of eyes. And that's inseparable from the subjects of how associated with how a breaching method had entrenched other communicated for nature with black people's rights of eyes. And then America's founders were born. And the breaching method had entrenched roles with that northern colonies and southern colonies. There's an officer, it's not Hunter Biden, but there's an officer Hunter involved with people at New Britain's Central Connecticut State University. I never had a conversation with him there. He was demonstrated to me there as one of the ones involved with former director of the F.B.I, Robert Lusky, before and after the World Trade Center attack, and Hartford courts and their families in intimate ties, and New Britain Superior Court with the same ones, like Eric Burgess, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people on for Wethersfield Judicial Branch offices and on for Wethersfield Corrections offices, with a whole bunch of people at West Hartford locations, a park near his house or where he grew up, and their roles with Amy or Emily, with some judges and prosecutors refusing to identify themselves legitimately, while they are having put all kinds of fake things in databases. These are families also foreign and domestic at medical campuses and fire campuses, running into high life regressions next to the campus, including Hartford Hospital has roles with criminal enterprises and private ones next to them through time, not legitimately with their roles with intelligence, with UConn and Central Connecticut State University and Quinnipiac University, Trinity College, with the names that next to Central Connecticut State University and next to Hartford Hospital, that are putting fake transcripts and databases with the Violet family, too, with foreign and domestic military, people all along Route 175 from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut. There are still roles of predicate acts with facts methods, identity theft, fraud, slanders, while tactically delusions wrought, still collusion /S, replacing how James Madison's plan is an inseparable scientific value from what witch trials are about. And the witch trials placed right next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Layers of other motivation, sense, and sensibilities by them, having replaced, while being used remotely, what James Madison communicated for us. They communicated for us, our founders communicated for us to refer to them plural as James Madison singular, and to understand how they used his plan, which was to force an extent of counter-extortion at key locations against key people, to make everyone have no means to defend themselves from the torture, extortion, fact-cheaping nature, slavery, therefore physical slavery method against every human species body, every name of the human species body of individual body. And then in layers where and how each nature of difference is reassigned, and roles with that self-valued, otherwise roles self-valued sensing for the breaching method, keeping other things, others, ourselves blamed for what nature itself shows us. One of the things that the laws that were entrenched before America's founders were born, enforced, entrenched still, through their lifetimes, because they didn't have free speech. They didn't have right to enumerate about that. I mean, going to that. They declassified it enough for us to know this. We have black people's rights of eyes to know it. We have the hypernative pure sky. We have the value of president/chief that is ciphered to be deciphered. And we were given the means, but those means were and are replaced. All pays. Our founders knew that we'd have punks playing games and not even realizing it, a certain type of victim/hyper victim, pretending they believed dishonestly, but while tactically delusions wrought, that the American Revolution was caused by a tea tax. James Madison's plan in the counter extortion at key locations was relative to there was already torture, extortion, and faction nature, therefore physical slavery rules entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, sickly distinctly through sickly distinct names, but also sickly non-distinctly. And not only has no one addressed that, no one will allow people to address that. The experts on the sciences had obligations to allow honesty of someone speaking about the extortion of George Washington. If they had done that, it would have brought up, James Madison's plan, and would have brought up their delusions. Those ones still formally collusions with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. So right through administrations, increasingly people would name former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members, and names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, including plaintiffs against them, their sources, their family members, different natures of conjunctions to them. They were increasingly involved in intercities with predicate acts against me, per the intelligence themselves, but they're forging and switching names and changing and faking narrative footage, what's actually communicated between police forms and people. And they do this intercities with the same houses involved with some untimely deaths and child abusers, leaders of kids, first force roles, years apart. Mixed natures of organized crimes, pretending they're legitimately with unmarked intelligence at the judicial branch offices and corrections offices. Also with their educators acting tied to people putting predicate acts with facts, fake things in databases, fake ties, fake natures of ties between students. And it's concentrated probate court judges tied to the houses with sexual and medical offenders of kids involved with untimely deaths and murders intercities that were brought up at the same time. That's recorded. Things are recorded on Facebook, that the natures of the law, the types of, this is my job. They're speaking about jobs. They leave out how the investigators are all criminally pointable, tactical delusions raw. Then they can't realize their roles changing and faking, hiding evidences as collusions. That then they're hiding that too by self-valuing roles of the prisons involved with organized crimes at the corrections offices next to them, or just driving by. The difference of that too. Same thing with the state judicial branch offices. Increasingly, the roles of predicate acts with facts and with criminal insidiousness nature itself being used to put fake motives, fake ties, fake natures of ties, fake communications. At locations, only 3 branches of government they are kept needing to at the same time with countries A through Z and overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and insidiousness of people A through Z relative to this. You guys came through campuses that and through founding locations, guys as museums that are explaining them exactly the way the human fact cheaping nature breaching method that had roles forced self-value to an extent A through Z. I mean, at colonies A through Z, northern colonies and southern colonies, and then America's founders were born. So everyone already hurt each other because it wasn't always my fault. In other words, those truths were to were keeping the breaching method left out. It's a scientific value that they replaced right from the communications of James Madison, of our founders behind him and his plan. That's what really caused the American Revolution. That's what really caused the Civil War. Also what caused the Civil War was the hyperforeign breaching method that had distinctly, even though distinctly, had slavery entrenched in the northern colonies, southern colonies. I'm not saying this to blame something. I'm saying it to get it recognized and it's done. to blame the principal treatments. See, we have still collusions with it, syntactic wise. You guys pretend things are debatable that are not, while tactically delusions are off. That's why there are methods where they switch names into branch and put fake things, fake transcripts into branch locations that are shown. They can't defend themselves in notions of integrity without self-valuing their very profession being and have been, an organized crime body. Until we're allowed to be criminal in ceaseless nature. You guys are criminally formidable / hyper-criminally formidable at countries A through Z. Here, Anthony. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers too. Collusions with them. A whole bunch of lawyers associated with the Connecticut news locations are involved with all kinds of wire crime acts and methods and sequence shifts, self-value, and fake motivation screening, even with the real ones too, because they have other countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists still used the same way, with them left out, and the corrections officers and judicial branch officers. In other words, people speaking about crimes, before they were speaking about crimes, they were rolled self-value with predicate acts with facts, black pupils. Clear the sciences, and each our names. Prepare. In other words, so that's why, in other words, they have mental health experts, and they have people that aren't even, and the people that aren't even mental health experts with the same criminally formidable, tactically delusions, raw natures of organized crime. In fact, true nature, quality aspects, and worse than criminal incompetence. Again, replacing James Madison's plan, where it is principle. That's what they did. We're supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington. It would have brought up how James Madison's plan was to counter-extort and force the rest of the founders, the rest of the presidents, the rest of the colonists, the rest of the, in other words, the regular citizens and the rest of the Native Americans. And I say the rest of them because our founders, plural, that refer to themselves as James Madison singular. That's 1/3 of them agreed to help James Madison, his plan, as the founders behind him. For example, not just because the president / chief, one general, even with the French general's help, a retired English general, did not have the strength to counter the internationally entrenched, forced conversations and international commerce that was still rolls with what witch trial. We don't have witch trials explained sanely why and how it's at the spot right next to where George Washington had to come right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. It had to force means to win the end of the Revolutionary War, but had to leave slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. People say, "Oh, George Washington had slaves." You guys leave out how he was. You leave out this part and change it for the breaching method that forced originally and still to dishonestly regarding the suburbs, let alone New York City. And this is really why and how Hartford, Connecticut was designed to unfold as a suburban / urban. All this was set up before America's founders were even born. And they communicated that, and they did not have free speech. They declassified this. Then even as a president, he didn't have free speech, James Madison. So no, we have the nature of debate since you guys were little kids. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions are all positive treatments and negative treatments. As rules too. Whether this breaching method needs other things, others or selves blame. That country's A through Z. And at locations, areas, and states, that country's A through Z. So if a grouping of countries tries to counter together, what hurts us all, not distinctly anyway, as the human species body of individual bodies. Everywhere the human species body has an individual body. We have been systems tactically ulterior, not just ulterior from the one that's positive unto itself, makes evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. We already know that everyone longs clear water, clean water, clear air. Things that not to be charged for things that we could have better than free and better quality. So you guys put the jobs The same one, and clearer than day. How many people from the suburbs want it? We could discern. When we see people we see the background of rap videos and the people in the big buildings. The suburbs are designed before America's founders were born for torture, extortion, slavery. The nature of debate about that also contains proofs of the same thing. But you guys are stealing our speech. You guys get away with it because they're putting predicate acts with facts in databases. All truths are used to see for lies. You got to pay attention to what we are capable of discerning, just having black people's whites alive projected by that identity that no one could be, but everyone can't help but be it anyway. Even art, it is inseparable from the as to is coming to from as with and for the identity of the finite or the smallest finite details or the order of the finite, distinctly from but non-distinctly from the order of the group details and the simultaneous values, which there was always a greater and more finite hyper-simultaneous being demonstrated to us. That which is not our species body, it's not those species bodies of individual bodies, note with all group differences demonstrating to us the identity of all space/existence to an extent. In other words, so they're faking it to make it at countries A through Z when they're asked questions. It is now through systems that have been tactical terror, from what more probably pantheism had been revealed to see through, including its own ism, to stay led by that which is true always, as the smallest finite detail not left out, not faked, not used for ulterior than its system about positive and negative. It is showing us there is cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall /S. Even if we can't discern clearly the cell nucleus through the microscope, in other words, its value is there. And the cell wall /S have the body of life, have the identities, volume signs, as projected by the identity of all space/existence. See, we have been theaters tacked a little tear from his, or its own, not his. Male and female are two natures of invisible /hyper invisible, but still discernible, that come with a third nature of it. It's about correlation, and it comes with the rest of its complete identity. Distinct where it's not juxtaposed with matter. Distinct where it is juxtaposed with matter. And distinct where the part that won't juxtapose and the part that is juxtaposed makes more and more of another part, where more and more identity of forever nature is being made as that which generated matter. Only the extent of it is debatable. And if this is debated, honestly, legitimately, people who debate it will have inherent to, active to, and progressive to their nature, their logic, their nature of logic, their fact, treat, nature, quality /qualities, aspects /aspects, and nature itself as criminal insidious nature /hyper criminal insidious nature. I'm not a lawyer. The lawyers originally, too, all sides of criminal and civil cases, putting the self-value in the same sequence as delusions, self-valuing the same predicate acts with facts, evidence racketeering worse than war crimes, subject mistreatments, exception nature, collusion /S, increasingly at countries A through Z, screening how really and why really, since before our founders here and there were born, the other countries were grouped here and there, and everyone's voicing for humanity. Tactical ulterior from how nature shows us the difference of group values. And like with the human species body, of individual bodies, with all grouped differences in demonstration of how its system will only stay positive to itself here, or it is forced from here. In other words, where and how it's showing us it is functional, how there is a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. that is hyper-conjunctive to all parts of speech, like the subject, no matter what language we're speaking about. And like why and how we need more than one name for a verb, like a present participle, past participle, like a predicate. No, a predicate is a main verb, but know how it is being valued by the identity of English itself, where it is a group part of the complete identity of everything. That is also the identity of law at the same time, therefore. And the law, know how it has as value a predicate act. A predicate act like mail crimes and wire crimes. WFSB is hiding the rules with wire crime methods too. They have a predicate act where they attach media fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack as their collusion/S with people interstates and international with that after the World Trade Center attack, but it recorded instantly their collusion/S with the other countries involved with that, interstates with them, and intercities and intra-cities. And WFSB also has people involved next to them with the intelligence involved with home break-ins and people from other areas that also put fake motivations, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people, where and how there are courts recorded involved with medical corruption, putting fake things in databases as collusion/S at crime scenes, increasingly with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people with their own differences and other people's differences, pretending passions and emotions, even when correctly, regarding their roles with sequence shifts and putting predicate acts with facts in databases, and some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, time collusions with their differences, also with sexual groups and body dumping spots, and murders, intercities, and untimely deaths, including ones years apart and ones that were at the same time brought up with the people on off the campuses too, intercities that have been played, like a whole bunch of people tied to a Joshua Stryker and a Joshua Julian with that I never saw in my area sought me out to record, express, demonstrate, confirm. They have roles with the Mark Violet, who sought me out as a stranger in my area, where there's a pattern of people who sought me out as a stranger and make it look like I was tied to the people who are involved with ongoing wire crimes with police refusing to identify themselves in multiple police departments. And these are not legitimate roles with intelligence next to the corrections officers and the judicial branch offices. And Eric Oliveri, a whole bunch of people next to the state judicial branch, different conjunctions to the state judicial branch offices, have been planting evidences there, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. And Eric Oliveri, people with the name Tomorrow. These are ones involved with the World Trade Center attack with a whole bunch of different countries. Weathersfield police attached me to fake conversations with them and at the police station too, as a kid and then as an adult. And then to hide all that, they pretended such through WFSB with sources of WTNH. Also planted evidences with them to force a principal child abuser and some sexual and medical offenders of kids who are families involved with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the kids of and the adults of prosecutors and judges and victims advocates involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and not legitimately with military next to the state capitol, involved with identity theft frauds with foreign and domestic military, too, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. On a mass scale, they change and fake what people say about such, and they go fishing to cover up the people above them, not honestly for the breaching method, because they're covering that up too. In other words, they learned how to do that from the breaching method at countries A through Z. It taught them how to speak for principles, not nature, not our founders. Our founders communicated, see the whites of eyes, black peoples. Here, it is time. We're going to get our free speech. And, they make mistakes, but they won't let people talk about it because they had a torture method before the World Trade Center attack. These are people involved with wire crime acts and methods that are fact-human nature-oriented predicate acts methods, involved with uses of words like crimes anyway, has roles with this, with putting predicate acts with facts in databases, corruption with mayors increasingly recorded, ones that also I never had a word of conversation with a former mayor Gold, his daughter, and people named Casper and others like Burstein involved increasingly with Central Connecticut State University names in New Britain, Connecticut, involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones and people tied to body dumping spots and people pretending passions and emotions about what they think of others and why they think about it as sequence shifts roles. They're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and a Gold family and other mayors, increasingly with the Whiting forensics too. Names at Whiting forensics also with a Phil Cololo is further involved with people involved with I don't know all their names, but they're tied to and as a Phil Cololo. But there are people with the weapons involved, like threats that are credible of their uses of poisons and of their roles with fire departments, with wire crime acts and methods, and putting fake things in transcripts, descriptions of what happens at locations, and refusing to identify themselves legitimately. The intelligence that used to be here and ones that are now are still making confessions about their roles with it from Wethersfield, Interbranch, and the intercampuses, including fire campuses, medical campuses, intercities, and on the sides of Central Connecticut State University in the Break, Connecticut, and the businesses and houses there are involved through time, involved with multiple fire departments and real estate agents. I don't know all their names. And the leasing agent and his kid is involved with a sexual circle with people interstates, with the intelligence community. And they were, where they were using the investigators, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. That was a Bobby Jean or a Bobby where they share the name Bobby too. And they have something to do with my neighbor's confessions, and not even knowing, but like with the Mendez police brothers involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and putting at the Wethersfield police station and next to Hartford's Fox 61 News, and the buildings next to it, and the spots next to it, which is right where the middle of Hartford is separated from the north end of Hartford. No. These are also people on off campuses with sexual and medical offenders years apart, where they had timed other natures of organized crime with them, identity theft, fraud, slanders against strangers, and trying to make fake exceptions has something to do with the state judicial branch offices involved with that. Recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed, involved. The only time I ever saw, the first and only time I ever saw an Eric Mendez in my life when I was and the whole time I was in middle school. And I saw him like 2 times at high school real quickly. Those are fake exceptions. He doesn't know me. He has increasingly educators of his from off campuses had influences with the FBI director Robert Luskin and various natures of federal criminals, his co-defendants and their family members and their kids have been planting evidences with Eric Mendez and people tied to him into databases at campuses I went and between them. And they have roles with an untimely death at Trinity College. Even if it was made up, they have an officer with the name, uses the name Darth Vader, involved with wire mail crimes, and then blaming other things they had in databases. On a mass scale, they're putting each year more fake things into databases. And with the people involved further, with judges and prosecutors, a whole bunch of names that they brought up. Rick Cianfaglione will tell you this. And in other words, it was their idea to go to the Wethersfield Shopping Center too. Increasingly, a Cololo family has roles with managers at Stop and Shops and with the Smith family. And one of them reportedly as a manager with Stop and Shop. And their roles with town lines, Hartford, Wethersfield, Rocky Hill, Wethersfield, Newington. They have roles and predicate acts with that, with the F.B.I. in foreign other countries, and intercities, West Hartford, New Britain. And so there's a Mazzucato bakery involved with a police chief Cintron Involved also with a Mayano family who make confessions too that are it's a federal crime to lie about it. We've also been putting fake things in databases, sequence shifts, fake ties. Like when I knew him, they tried to make a fake exception. One time they probably took a picture of me, but I had no response when I near the cafeteria when I was in high school. It wasn't even my grade. My neighbor hung around with people in the above and below my grade. But I don't even know. And that's one of the reasons I had to stay back is people were putting fake things in databases, hid what I recorded before that. And these are increasingly people with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, interreligious nutbags theme, time collusion with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with falsified police reports and fake ties to kids, foreign and domestic, that Wethersfield police chiefs retired have with the same house at 80 Carrotsville Drive. And with the house there, like with Smith family, increasingly with people involved with violent threats against me, with the Wethersfield Police forging and switching names, lying about their motivations for it, making confessions over the phone, put fake phone conversations with me too, change what's actually recorded, digital evidences. There's an officer Poison didn't even let me speak, even I listened to his questions. I let him think on digital. Then I had to hide that as his collusion. There's an officer Poison with some sexual and medical offenders of kids and interreligious spots rolls with it, also with the names next to it. Increasingly names all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it and conjunctions to that, which is like the state judicial branch offices, are people that have roles of putting predicate acts with facts into databases with other countries at the same time. These are also people on Facebook. Facebook, personally and professionally, has roles completely their fault, but also they have collusions with predicate acts within the Britain Superior Court's Facebook page. Also with the Facebook page of the principal upskirt nature after that and through that. They had roles with that. And they have wire and mail crime roles. And they're hiding the confessions that and demonstrate and confirmations that were made to me, and predicate acts with facts, wire crime acts methods, federal evidences crimes methods and rackets, drugs and medicines crimes with the kids, the only bodies that are allowed to counter it because they've been hiding live progressions at those locations, including with the family members of judges and prosecutors and victims advocates involved with the same house, involved with the principal upskirt nature, that they forced it and they have a Phil Colo involved with them. Further now with a Bob Chase and a whole bunch of people with whiting forensics. So they're also lying. These are people that put fake conversations with me tied to the name Leahy. Rick Cianfaglione sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. There's a Leahy family involved with them planting evidences along Hangdog Lane and Two Rod Highway and its conjunctions like Route 3 and the Borough Turnpike before the heart of Hartford. Also, there are people I don't even know my name. That a whole bunch of people tied to a Chet Casper involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, putting fake things in databases, and with a former Mayor Gold's family and an O'Brien family and other intelligence families that used to live near me. There's ones with the name D. Simone too. These are multiple police departments involved with various natures of organized crimes against elderlies, against veterans' homes, and next to them, the difference of it too, at the judicial branch offices, corrections offices, and it's concentrated corrections officers. And probation officers, probation judges and families, and prosecutors' families that are involved with sexual and medical offenders are the ones near me, involved with the Wethersfield police that attached me to fake conversations with them and ties to themselves as a kid and now as an adult. We're going to have to get the Dillon family on camp paper too. I don't know all their names, but a bunch of people at Hartford Hospital, including their patients, even if they're intelligence, they run in their high life progressions, but they make it look like we have conversations when they say things. And and they're also putting fake audio and video, forging names of doctors and putting fake transcripts of people. And in the conversations, they're speaking about criminal cases they have personally and professionally predicate acts with federal criminals in the cases with. Increasingly, there's a Dearborn Street in Newington, Connecticut, involved with judges and prosecutors with and federal agencies. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendant lives on Dearborn Street in Newington, and there's a little park near there. And these are people in their parks in Hartford. And these people involved also with the untimely deaths and murders, including one that girl dragged to her death from next to Hartford Hospital and dropped off at the corner of that location too. Even if, well, I'm not saying Mark Violet or Mike Violet or the other Violets in their family. They know my name. I don't even know anything involved with the us. Those are also people at the corner of Elm Street and Weathersfield and Rocky Hill. Has something to do with their roles with predicate acts, with facts and databases, and all along Route 175. With the Justin Klovinskis is involved also with a Mark Carone, a Kevin Carone, and others like Danielle Perone and Tom Perone have some medical and sexual offenders of kids and people involved with a religious spot next to Harvard, next to Fox Connecticut News. And they have something to do with the corner of Southstein Highway and Town Line Drive, since through different owners of the building there. And I believe the Kerr family owns it now. I forgot the name of the business. But they're involved with the intelligence planting fake things in databases. And people with identity theft fraud slams behind people's backs at campuses, putting fake things in databases, fake exceptions. I never saw a Heather Hansen around a campus. I saw one quick 1 second, they made a fake exception consciously. That's one of the things that ties people with the judges and prosecutors who have time collusions with years apart, but they had time collusions with them too. Ongoing more too, child abusers, leaders of kids, and abuses of their own kids, and uses of their sense and sensibilities. Like there are women principals with the name O'Connor that are being and haven't been recorded confessed by some people involved with home break-ins years ago, involved with police forms and neighbors of Eric Klotz and his confessions and demonstrations of his roles with Central Connecticut State University names. That also recorded confessed, demonstrate, confirm him and roles with them with wire crimes with Weathersfield police, identity theft, fraud, slanders, uses of their own differences, of other people's differences, including as veterans of war. In other words, it's one thing to sacrifice it for your country. It's another thing to use that to get involved with other people's business dishonestly. These are people before he came to Eric Klotz was put in my 6th grade class. Already there were body dumping spots and various natures of federal criminals involved with increasing and putting fake things in databases, identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake motivations. So in other words, they're trying to make fights between people too. These are people also with the FBI in a number of ways, involved with the corner of Fairlane Drive and Griswold Street. I don't even know their names. Increasingly, people making confession demonstration of its roles with this Joshua Stryker and others at Hartford Hospital. I mean, at Harvard Hospital, but also at Trinity College, as the ones next to Trinity College too, with the Cololo family. The Cololo family and others were influenced to put fake things in databases about me. Has something to do with their roles with the judicial branch offices, the corrections offices, and the houses and the businesses next to Hartford Hospital and at it, involved with criminal enterprises with them, including their roles with proven and further recorded child abusers, leaders of the kids, including sexual and medical, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists at the same time. Don't forget they attached me to fake World Trade Center attack conversations with themselves and others. And they have all these countries that were involved, including Saudi Arabia, with the campuses like Central Connecticut State University, UConn, and Trinity College at the same time that the Mark Violet and others had and have collusions with, and with names at the judicial branch offices and next to it through time. Has something to do with that. Stephen Stocko has wire crimes with them, and his educators, intercities involved with abuses of kids, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. He has identity theft frauds with them, wire crime acts and methods with the police, putting fake transcripts, falsified police reports, roles with their sources too, collusions at crime scenes. Get them on paper, one name and sequence, and make sure this Stephen Stockwell doesn't pretend I ever had a conversation with him before. The only sentence I ever said to him is Maria there. And they brought this up too. They're sequence shifting, pretending passions and emotion. And don't pretend I ever had any intimate ties with Maria Vazino. Her neighbors are involved with some sick gangs, with the judges and prosecutors involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids too. Further, with the Board of Education and their roles with communications at the regular news, and the difference of that, the collusions with the same ones, with a whole bunch of different countries involved with the public television. You get them on name paper, one name and sequence. Hartford, Wethersfield, Intercities, New Britain. You guys have sick people involved. I'll show you how they're sabotaging your education, putting faked and changed transcripts in databases. Dear God, they have our founders' communications changed. Let's get them on paper. That's why these that's just yes, mental health, criminality. They want to pretend it's debatable by using passions and emotions dishonestly. Passions and emotions, if they're not going to be about simultaneous / hyper simultaneous, they're dishonest. These are highly misinformed presidents, tactically misinformed, because campuses A through Z, and the differences of them, they are used by a predicate acts with facts method. You're going to see a lot more of what is recorded than you could fathom, because all sides of criminal and civil cases in the courts themselves, the different and names on Office of Corrections, judicial, and Washington D.C. rolls with this. You guys came through breach sciences. You came through breach location /S, then hyper additionally collusions with databases that we could discern, and hyper additionally collusions with databases at campuses and exceptions like homeschool. That's why they are a homeschool family, even if that was a directed narrative, because there's behavior racketeering worse than war crimes that our leaders have tough roles with. So get me off the fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack, and get the other people off the changed communications about that. They've been lying about the outcomes of legal cases too, per the relativity of their increasing collusions with all natures of crime scenes, only capable of being there originally and still. That's why they can't afford to have discerned. They can't afford to be short words properly too, let alone to protract about how and why. Which trials, regardless of who made them up there and what extent they're about those crazy laws that were entrenched, including with torture, extortion, slavery against everyone. Sickly distinctly, to use functionally how sickly non-distinctly, rather than be countered and valued that way by everyone. Also to discern the breaching method, a scientific value replaced right from James Madison's in our founders' communications, replaced right from nature's black people. This is because there's criminal and ceaseless natures of positive and negative treatments. These aren't brain problems. Even if they are brain problems, they're faking brain problems of other people with criminally foreign influence, tactically delusional, all kinds of natures of organized crime with the mental health care side of triages. They're putting fake things in those databases no one's looking into. Judges are speaking fake things in and their delusions in records still as collusion /S with all natures of crime scenes. They're lying about, pretending it's personal when they hear that from backgrounds, etc. All exceptions, in other words, show a fake exception nature. They cannot afford to appreciate how nature uses exception nature the ways we know. But then further hyper addition, we could discern more than one detail left out when people describe their own emotions or others. Patriotism is about this identity of simultaneous / hyper simultaneous nature, where it is all things, but it's distinctly itself, where it is not juxtaposed with matter, where it is juxtaposed with matter, and where it is those two. with an increasing volume being made as a third part, where it is the rest of its complete nature. Just like there's a rest of your complete nature's your complete identity that is with and as each of the cells, the parts of your body, but they are simultaneous, a semi-nature relationship to your complete identity. And that with and as our semi-nature relationship it is to ours, of the human species body, of individual body. I think